Robert Richardson is a 66-year-old cinematographer that has worked on some of the greatest films from the past few decades. From Platoon and Salvador, to his award-winning work on JFK, The Aviator, and Hugo, to the newer works of Quentin Tarantino like The Hateful Eight, Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Robert Richardson has shot some amazing films. Richardson was born in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and he graduated from Rhode Island School of Design with a BFA in Film, Animation, Video. He worked as a cinematographer for TV documentaries until he met Oliver Stone, who hired him to shoot Salvador in 1986. From there, he proved his cinematography chops to Oliver Stone, who kept working with Richardson for the next few hits that put Robert Richardson on the map. Together, they made Platoon, Salvador, Wall Street, and from there, he began to work with other big names, starting with John Sayles. One of the most unique things about Robert Richardson is knowing that nearly every shot that can be attributed to him was operated by him. He's his own camera operator, sometimes sitting next to the camera on cranes so he can shoot it exactly the way he wants. He's also dedicated to using the viewfinder on a camera instead of the monitor, stating that,
"One eye closes and the other eye is focused on what you're aiming at. If you have both eyes available to you, you're scanning a world. And it's very difficult to put your concentration into the very thing you're supposed to be shooting."
Which is a complete contrast to pretty much any other cinematographer who sticks to looking at the monitor while a camera operator works with the camera. A lot of action films have fast-moving cameras to hype up the already adrenaline-pumping action of fight scenes, explosions, and gunfights. However, Robert Richardson's action scenes are shot to show as much of the action as possible. The camera moves to show the action authentically and leaves the rest up to the actors and their own coordination to make their actions seem real. While there are close-ups during his fight scenes as well, you won't see the camera moving frantically to attempt to capture the action because, by then, you're already looking at a wide angle. Robert Richardson has worked with some of the greatest directors of all time: Oliver Stone, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, Errol Morris, John Sayles, all of them needing some amount of creative control of how a film is shot, and Richardson understands what they want and does it in spades. Tarantino is so specific with the shots that he wants, his scripts are written with direction for the cinematographer. That being said, Robert Richardson still has plenty of control of the overall composition of the shot, giving it his personal touch in a way that both him and the director can both be proud of. One of those personal touches is the strong backlights and rim lights that illuminate the backs of characters like a halo of light. This creative decision makes the characters pop out of their background, and audience doesn't have to try very hard to see the subject of the shot. Although other cinematographers would shy away from overexposing the light in instances such as this, there are numerous instances where a Robert Richardson shot has overexposed light in the shot and it looks beautiful. Another Richardson trademark is how he uses bounce boards as the key light to bathe the characters in light in a naturalistic way, filling in for a lot of the overexposed lighting that frames the characters, producing some of his most iconic shots. In an interview with TheTalks.com, Robert Richardson said this about the equipment he uses to shoot his films. "I try to bend and be a chameleon towards what the director is looking for. All filmmakers should have the opportunity to use film or to use small cameras such as an iPhone to create an entire film, or to work with the Alexa or the Red. I think all of these are tools to create and they're all vital. For The Hateful Eight, Richardson shot with a 70mm, shooting with lenses that hadn't been used in 50 years, experimenting with equipment that he hadn't shot with before. In some ways, he's still old school, using light meters to test lighting because he doesn't trust a monitor and is used to using a light meter for shooting film. However, in other ways, like the camera he shoots with and the lighting he uses, he's still experimenting to find what works best with the film he's currently working on." For the work that Robert Richardson has done, he has been nominated for the Academy Award for Best Cinematography 10 times, winning 3 of those times. He's been nominated for Best Cinematography or Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography with the BAFTA, the American Society of Cinematographers, and the Satellite Awards. He has also won awards for Platoon, The Horse Whisperer, Bringing Out the Dead, Inglourious Basterds, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let's look at a scene from Shutter Island and see how Robert Richardson uses primarily lighting to help tell the story. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Shutter Island before, I will be discussing a scene from the ending of the film. Near the end of Shutter Island, Edward Daniels has finally made it to the lighthouse, the place where the experiments have to be taking place. He enters the top room to find Dr. Cawley sitting at a desk expecting him. Daniels checks the room for weapons as Dr. Cawley asks Daniels to sit down. In the side shot of Dr. Cawley, you'll notice that the documents on the table are lit well, but not too bright because Daniels is more focused on his survival, not some papers on Dr. Cawley's desk. This tension between the two is interrupted by a hallucination of Daniels' wife who tells him to leave and then disappears into the darkness, meaning that whatever she represents is also relative to darkness. We go back to Daniels, who doesn't have the Richardson halo lighting that Robert Richardson is known for. It's worth noting that Dr. Colley has a little bit of a backlight shown at his head, representative of how he understands and accepts the truth of the situation already, so it's not nearly as blinding as the overexposed light. Daniels reveals that he knows about the missing doctor and that Daniels finally has the proof to blow the lid off of this place, but we go back to Dr. Colley, who reveals that the missing doctor isn't real. At the same time, the once well-lit documents on Dr. Colley's desk are now overexposed. Something about those documents is relative to the truth, or at least the opposite of whatever Daniels' wife represents. For the first time in the scene, Daniels finally has the Richardson halo lighting, but it's only around his body up to his neck, representative of how Daniels is considering the words of Dr. Colley without outright calling him a liar. Daniels is almost at the truth. As Daniels begins to question Dr. Colley, Daniels moves closer to the desk, walking out of the light, representative of his lack of willingness to understand what's really going on. Dr. Colley hands Daniels essentially a cheat sheet of Daniels' notes from the investigation, which is still overexposed like it was on Dr. Colley's desk, so much so that it's even lighting up Daniels' face. As Daniels reads this, the camera moves right and pans around Daniels, letting the audience understand that we should be just as shocked by the realization as Daniels is, since we've been seeing the entire film from his perspective. Then we cut back to Daniels' refusal to accept what Dr. Colley is saying, his head unlit again. Regression. Dr. Colley changes strategies and moves over to a whiteboard, and he deliberately moves a lamp up to the whiteboard, overexposing it, further connecting overexposure to the truth. Dr. Colley still continues to convince Daniels as the halo light is back on Daniels' head. Dr. Colley shows Daniels a transcript of the conversation between Daniels and a patient of whom Daniels almost beat to death, this document even brighter and almost overexposing Daniels' face. Dr. Colley reveals that the board and the warden have decided that Daniels has to accept the truth or get lobotomized, while the top of Daniels' head is partially lit with a REM light. He understands what Dr. Colley is saying, but he doesn't believe it. Not yet. Dr. Colley brings out Daniels' partner, who turns out to be Daniels' therapist. As he walks by, the overexposed light now touches Daniels' face. He's seeing physical proof that how he has been seeing the events of the island isn't true. Daniels walks out of the light again to accuse Chuck of backstabbing him, hoping his perception of the situation is still real. Chuck reveals that he's been the doctor that Daniels thinks is in charge of drugging patients this whole time, Dr. Sheehan, the backlight connecting his words to the truth that Daniels has to realize. Dr. Colley takes the attention again, Daniels getting even more light around him as the other men begin to push him to the truth, telling him that what we have been perceiving throughout the film has been an elaborate role play to prove that Daniels' truth is simple fantasy. Daniels struggles to deal with this and sits down, his clothes being lit up even more as he begins to accept what he's hearing. However, Daniels jumps out of the chair and pulls a gun on the two men, trying as hard as he can to reject the truth, represented by everything about Daniels being lit up except his face. He attempts to shoot Dr. Colley, but the shots do nothing. The gun was never loaded, the gun wasn't even a gun. The revealed Dr. Sheehan steps up to Daniel saying, "We're telling you the truth," just as he steps into the light. As Dr. Sheehan talks, you can see that Daniels' face is overexposed. He's gazing upon the truth. Daniels rejects it again as he tries to choke Dr. Sheehan, returning once again to darkness. As a last-ditch effort to stop the struggling, Dr. Colley brings out photos of the dead children that's been in Daniels' mind all film, revealing that they were his children. As Dr. Colley keeps pushing Daniels towards the truth, Daniels walks backwards into more overexposed light, Dr. Colley himself becoming overexposed. The truth is almost impossible for Daniels to handle. Daniels holds the photographs of his children as he begins to light up even more. The hallucination of Daniels' wife now overexposed as well to reveal that she understood the truth now as well. We cut back to a wide of Daniels, his deceased wife, and what we now realize is Daniels' deceased daughter. The other men are missing, and we witness it all with low angles, now seeing the power struggle within Daniels through the doctor's eyes, with Daniels on a pedestal since he has to truly accept what he's hearing from them to finally be cured. The deceased daughter extends out a well-lit hand for Daniels to hold, bringing him to a flashback of the scene that made Daniels lose his mind. The well-lit hand representing that Daniels can finally ease himself into the truth of what happened to his family. What a beautifully shot film. Robert Richardson has worked in cinema for 35 years, shooting some of the most important films to ever hit the screen. Without Richardson, we don't have iconic shots of Leonardo DiCaprio with his head overexposed as his character realizes the sad truth of the film. Without Richardson, we don't have excellent lighting as Kurt Russell destroys a priceless guitar in The Hateful Eight. Without Richardson, we don't have the absolutely iconic framing of Jamie Foxx in Django Unchained. His creativity and willingness to try something new with every film is inspirational to future cinematographers who want to still find beauty in filmmaking and have fun while doing it.